Sausage and Lindy.
Sounds fine.
Okay.
We're fine.
Okay.
You all did fine?
Okay.
Just what I consider.
Drinks.
I've seen your sport thing before.
Okay. What was that?
Where's the last trip?
I didn't think. Voting over that?
We want to
I've got a
this back over here.
I've seen the sport.
I've got three of them. We pull them out for chili, stew.
I keep them out.
Right.
Yeah.
Never know.
Bring it up there, minimize it.
There's this guy who makes little custom pocket tools that I follow his blog. And every once in a while, he'll squirt out back and people go crazy. 800 people trying to get like 30 things he makes. But he's got this little sport that's funny. His riff on the wooden spoon that comes in the cups of ice cream. And it's just this little flat titanium paddle, you know, that big, with your wallet. You know, the sort of a shovel end and a fork end. We had one of those in my
All right, you gentlemen are live. You have a great presentation.
Great, thank you very much.
So I hear that Tennessee.
I think it leaves this open and it opens up to
national
two presentation. So we do this on top of it.
No,
No?
really?
Someone told me.
February?
I don't know what it is.
So
I'm
why?
trying to figure out.
I don't know what it is.
That I have not heard. You think we'd be on the front ones? I knew.
Someone told me that they're gonna do national.
Well,
language.
okay.
I see Nashville only in February. I don't see that in July.
So,
It's too big.
loud. Am I loud?
Many people who, morning, good morning, love to utter the words, Tennessee is a long state. How many times have you heard that from people in Tennessee?
Looks like we're in Tennessee a lot.
Yeah, because that's the first thing they tell you.
So we can click back
See if
here
it's
without affecting anything.
That's true. I mean, I drove from Vermont to Rochester.
Scroll
I
back
made that
there.
That's all day.
trip. Yeah. It's all nice.
The arrows.
It sure is the Arkansas section of that.
I don't know that again.
No, well, that is. Yeah, but if we're clicking to those area, it won't go back and forward.
Made that trip twice and then we drove.
Yeah, well, there's 6 people here.
once.
That's three for each of you. I already seen it.
All right. We're glad more than just you showed up.
Seriously. Move up a bit.
You know, it's the Friday, it's the Saturday,
You know, people are still.
everyone drives out. You're lucky that we're here.
Yeah, we know it.
Give them a minute. You know, it's recorded, you know, there's heavy traffic on that site after Valley. You know, it's a lot of press, ranked up in the YouTube rankings. All right, so we can go there. Hey, Darren. Let's see. Wait, wait. See you got here. This is Steve. Solid Rock.
There.
Matt,
Nice to meet you.
it's me again.
He's in the same small grouping as you, which is, I guess something I want to figure out. What people I call first.
What you guys get?
We did get hats, we picked up yesterday.
Oh, we should have worn them there on the presentation.
Maybe that's the day.
Chris.
And your t-shirts.
Kansas, right?
Sorry?
Kansas.
Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Okay.
Okay.
You guys are all set?
I think so.
Okay, cool.
Okay, who do we have here? We got, so Nebraska,
Mhm.
where are we from?
Michigan.
Michigan? Rutgers, excellent.
Tennessee.
Tennessee?
Cleveland.
Cleveland Rocks.
Where are you from?
We're from NYU Law. It's a, early Saturday morning, we can wait a minute or two more. People are still recovering from Friday nights and breakfasts. We don't have a keynote this morning.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yes, hey, Exam4 guy.
Good.
Good, how are you? What?
What's your name?
Tim.
Tim. You can, right?
Yeah,
Tim.
almost like Tom,
Oh,
but
Tom.
Tim.
It's on here.
He's presenting.
You know?
He's here.
No. It's good. How's it going? It's super quiet. I don't remember hearing from you. Did we have any issues at all?
Well, you heard from us when we had to re-download Exam4.
Well, there's that,
the
yes.
morning of the exam.
There was that.
Other than that, we were pretty quiet.
Yeah. Other than that.
I tell you, man, how many freaking Windows XP machines are still out there?
Fewer.
Yes. You'd be surprised how many Laura laptops go out the week of exams.
Exercise the demons.
It's easier to just lose them through graduation.
That's for sure.
I think our LLM, our part-time students who work in firms are the hardest ones to squeeze off, because if their firms are still just giving them laptops with XP on them, that's,
That was about the only one we ran into too.
yeah.
All of our JD students, we just offer them the opportunity to have us upgrade their laptop for them if it supports it.
Oh, that's interesting.
We pretty much just don't support XP or Vista. We say it's 7 or nothing.
Right.
So
Yeah, we thankfully do not see very many students with Vista on their laptops.
we see a frightening number. All of them 2007 or 8 era HP DD series. Yeah. Usually with a dying hard drive too.
No servers back in
Well, I'll tell you though,
No service packs, right?
I still love me some XP on my home machine.
I have a 2004 Dell desktop that not only is still running XP, I shut off updates and never turned it on. So I'm running the original shipped version from 2004. And I go on the internet.
At least have FP2.
Well, at least you use
Not even
USB
FP2.
ports.
No, it's the original shipping version of XP. I got it as soon as XP came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the industry, we call that sending out.
Well, you know, I've never. You might. Yeah, I don't really have any problems with it.
All right, shall we begin? So if you're here for the treatise on 11th century neologisms, that is across the Atlantic. We're here to discuss ExamReporter, which is, as you probably know, an administrative web application to support Exam4 exams. So I'm Darren Phelps.
I'm Brian Yelke.
We are from the New York University School of Law. Just to let you know, NYU School of Law resides in the heart of Greenwich Village in New York City. We're home to about 2,200 students, including our part-timers, and we support approximately 120 faculty and about 500 of full-time staff and administrators. So we're mentioning that just so you know about the size of the law school. We're, I suppose, one of the largest schools around, which is part of the reason why we built this application to help support our administration of exams. Our IT department consists of about 30 full-time employees, about 7 of which are in user services. So our help desk supports all of our full-time faculty, staff, and administrators, and the students as well on their laptops. We do that without student workers, which, depending on where you're from, may seem odd. But that is our help desk staff is devoted to everyone. So especially during the exam period, we do get pretty busy. And since this is early in the morning, we'll give you some softballs. We'll talk a little bit about our exams. We're probably all pretty similar in law schools. So all of our exams are done on computers. Most of them are done on essay, or in an essay form. We do have some exams which are administered with multiple choice, and we have an even smaller subset which use a blend of essay and multiple choice, depending on the faculty member. We also use anonymous grading, so there is an anonymous test ID generated each semester for every student, and if they are lucky enough to have a midterm exam, then they'll also get a separate midterm test ID from their final exam. And as is generally practiced in law schools, the final exam is the only evaluation that these students are getting during the course, which just raises the stress level for everybody, especially the students. And so a few logistical things. For our exams, we bring ITS into the room for half an hour prior to each exam period. We do have to leave the room once the exam begins, so we're there to help people just get Exam4 started up and answer any questions they may have, and to sort of allay any fears they have about technology or what their laptop happens to be doing that day. If there is a problem during the exam, then the proctors are instructed to have the students follow a simple sheet of instructions, which has them restart their computer and try and get back into their exam template. And then failing that, if the students still have an issue, they are escorted to an alternate location where we have other things happen for them. All of our proctors at NYU Law are hired by the school externally, so they come in, and we also have, recently we started adopting something where we have law school administrators come in at the beginning of the exam, so they're there to help give certain instructions to the students, and as they say, to impart a seriousness of purpose for the exams, and in part also because there were some questions about the quality of our proctors that were coming in and their ability to effectively communicate what was required of the students to do.
Do you have any faculty who insist on proctoring their own exams?
We do not. I think our faculty probably insist on not proctoring their exams. They love to be as hands-off at this point as they can. Generally, we see them at the end of the semesters, like running for the hills, going off for vacations, or whatever they're doing over winter or summer breaks.
All right, so let's take a look at our exam support model. At NYU Law, all of the exams are taken on laptops. That means that there is no handwriting, no blue books, no exceptions. So accordingly, we have a laptop requirement for the students. All students are required to have a laptop when they come to the school, and that laptop must meet a certain set of our minimum requirements. So Help Desk provides support throughout the entire semester for these laptops. And this support comes in the form of getting onto Wi-Fi, email setup, doing basic support, doing software and hardware troubleshooting. However, during the exam period, we sort of take this up a notch, and we open up what we affectionately call the command center. So the command center is staffed by a mix of folks from the help desk and other ITS administrators. And we sort of set up shop in one of our larger seminar rooms, which is just across the hall from the help desk office. This separation allows us to sort of keep the exam support separate from our regular help desk, and so we don't interfere with our regular daily duties of the help desk. And the seminar room provides us a bit of a larger space to help accommodate the larger student body that we have. So if we flash back for a second to the fact that we're located in the heart of Greenwich Village, you might realize that we're in a very densely populated area, and as such, NYU really doesn't want to give free Wi-Fi to all of Lower Manhattan. So we have an enterprise-level wireless network with similar type of security. So this sort of results in the biggest difficulty that we see. This is something that we see throughout the entire semester, as well as the exam period, and that's students trying to get onto the Wi-Fi. So that's one of the biggest things that we're really helping the students with in the command center. In addition to that, we also just sort of help the students with their general laptop problems, both prior and post exams. So we have a few contingencies that we have set up for problems that occur during the exam period. One of those is loaner laptops, which some of you folks at other law schools may have. And that the loaner laptops is really for the sort of catastrophic failures that may happen at the last minute for students. These failures can be last-minute virus infection, hardware failure, liquid spill like coffee or soda, theft, or even their laptop gets run over by a bus.
These all actually happen to any one of our students at some point in time. These aren't made-up scenarios.
Yeah. So these laptops come from a pool of loaner laptops that we have at the help desk. Those laptops are normally available to faculty and during events throughout the rest of the semester, but we take those laptops and we dedicate them just for exams during the exam period. So the other contingency that we have set up is our alternate test-taking room. This is a room that we have to accommodate for problems that occur during the actual exams. Because we don't allow blue books or handwriting in the exams, that means that students must take all their exams in their entirety on a computer. If there's a failure with their particular laptop, then they're going to finish on one of our computers. So we take our training room, which is about 24 desktop PCs, which kind of doesn't really get a whole lot of use during the exam period anyway, and we repurpose that for our alternate test-taking room. So if a student does happen to have a problem with their laptop during an exam, proctor, as mentioned in the exam, will escort that student down to the alternate room, and the alternate room itself is actually also monitored by a proctor that's hired by the school. If the student requests, we'll have an ITS representative come down, they'll take a look at the laptop, see if they can get the student back up and running in their exam on their own computer. If that doesn't work, maybe we'll take the exam file, put that onto one of our computers, see if we can get the exam reopened that way so they can continue with their existing answers. And failing all of that, we'll just start with a blank exam and they'll continue there. You might be wondering, because of the escorting of the student down to this alternate room, that takes a little bit of time. It could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes before that student is up and running again. So what happens during that time? Does that student get that time for their exam, or do they lose it? Well, we have something that we call exam compliance at the law school. And we require students to take a practice exam by a particular deadline before the start of the exam period. They take that practice exam and successfully upload it, which they can check in ExamReporter, then they are considered exam compliant. That means if they happen to have a problem with their laptop during an exam, they have to go down to the alternate room. The amount of time that it takes to get from the exam room to the alternate room and get set up and going again on their exam, they don't lose that time, 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is. If they're not compliant, they didn't take that practice exam or they didn't properly upload it by the deadline, then they're going to lose that time. So just a quick view of the types of problems that we see for students that come down to the alt room, which, by the way, we average somewhere between maybe 25 and 30 students in the alt room during any exam period. That may seem like a lot of students, but keep in mind that we do have a large student body, 2,200 students. So if you do the math, it's actually a really low percentage. So dominating the pie chart, we have Windows updates and we have sort of general user error. Those are causing problems. So the Windows updates are really students who didn't take the time to run the Windows updates on their laptops before the exams, and so sometimes the laptop will just restart in the middle of the exam. The other portion of things is user error. Those are things, it's nothing's wrong with the software, nothing's wrong with the laptop, it's just the user is doing something silly. Either they're misunderstanding what's happening on the laptop or something else is going on. That's pretty much the most of what we see for students down the alt room. So, all the exams, Batman. So, as we mentioned, we're a large school. This means that we administer about 7,000 exams total during any given semester. This is just in-class exams, by the way. This doesn't include our take-home exams, and it also doesn't include somewhat of a nightmare that we have for our remote exams, but that's for our graduate tax LLM program. That's sort of a story for another day. So anyway, all of these exams, all of this going on, this really adds up to a lot of stress. Not just for the students, which, the aforementioned only one grade during the entire semester situation, but it's also for really everybody who's involved in administering the exams. Now, I'm sure everybody has their own mix of different administrators supporting the exams. At NYU, we have about 30 administrators from 5 different departments. This includes academic services, records and registration, student affairs, our duplicating department. Those are the folks that print out the exam questions, and they also print out the exam responses if requested by the faculty member after the exam is completed. And of course, we have the IPS department. And all of these administrators have access to ExamReporter in order to help provide support during the exam period.
So with it,
Question?
question.
What else does duplicating services do when they're not printing exams?
They provide sort of the larger volume printing for the school during the semester. So if faculty have course materials that they want to hand out during the semester, anything that they might have published themselves or they want provided to the students, the duplicating services will print those out, bind them, things like that. There are a lot of other smaller publications that the school might do that they'll do binding for those things. There's lots of stuff. Different events will do big posters and signs and things like that.
One more question.
Sure.
So these admins, are they in the alternate test center room, or they're just in their offices?
They're in
on
their
the
regular
semester?
offices during the exam
Okay.
period. So they're called upon, they're doing all of the things that they do to support exams, but they might be called upon for various reasons. If there's a question of a policy regarding a student and their exam or something like that, we might call people down from academic services or student affairs to handle the situation.
Okay, and the proctors actually stay in the room during the entire exam?
Each exam room will have a couple of proctors, so that way if a student has to go down to the alt room, there is always at least one proctor in a room at a time.
We leave ours right unattended. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And also, folks from academic services are typically floating around, so they'll stop by the exam room during the start of the exam period, make sure that things are going well. Often there's a question that comes up from the students when they look at the instructions on the exam sheet, and the academic services folks will be there to help answer or figure out exactly what to do in sort of strange circumstances like that. So before going on, we'll take a moment and talk about software vendors. As I like to tell my wife, she's the only woman I knew. I never dated anyone before I met her, and just like with Exam4, we didn't use any software vendors before we met Exam4. So Greg, cover your ears for this next part. We had, when Brian and I first started working at the law school, we might have used someone called Product A, and to protect the names of the innocent here. So Product A was a fine product, and we used them. Unfortunately, over time, the student demand really needed a Mac support option, and they didn't have that, and so the decision was made to move to Product B. So Product B offered a Mac client, and we switched over to them for some time, and we used them. And then after a few technical difficulties with them, we decided to move towards Exam4, where we are now happy, and we've never known any other product that has made us as happy. Unicorns and rainbows. So you can uncover your ears now, Greg. The one shortcoming we did have, though, when we moved over to Exam4 was that we didn't have the administrative interface that we were accustomed to with products A and B. And because of our administration's familiarity and sort of expectation with that level of interface through web access and that sort of ease, we were in a position where we wanted to give them something along those lines. And so some of those features that you'd imagine would be sort of enrolling students and associating students with the courses and exams that were being given, tracking uploaded exam files and being able to see which students did or didn't upload their exams, and even sort of seeing the various phases along the way of students who were getting ready for exams and doing things that they needed to do, so that you didn't get buried in a rush towards the end of the semester right before exams started. And so this led us to consider our first process with Exam4. When we first looked at it, we thought, well, boy, it would be great if we had some sort of central reporting tool that we could use, but in the meantime, we can hack something together. So we looked at something that looked a little bit like this, where we would remote into our exam receiver, and then we would go to the folder with all of our exams in it, and we would run some scripts that might look something like this, that would take the directory and turn that into a plain text file that we could throw into Excel. And once in Excel, we would strip apart the exam names and look at that and have separate sheets in there that had our student registrations in them, and do some VLOOKUPs, and generally doing things with Excel that you don't want to do in Excel, but rather maybe in a database or something like that. So this caused us a little bit of a headache looking at administering over 100 exams per semester with the number of students that we had. So what we wanted to do was get to this. We wanted the easy button. We wanted something that we could automate and have a central data store, immediate access to everything, reducing the clerical and human error that would be inherent in such a process as before. So what we did was we built a web app, and that was easy, right? Everyone can build a web application these days. Well, we decided to undertake it, and it actually turned out pretty well, but it wasn't easy, but it really helped us out. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the architecture of what this looks like. Just to show up hands, does everyone here actually use Exam4? Okay, so we might have someone who doesn't use Exam4? Okay, all right. So for you, we'll give a little bit more information. Of course, it starts with the student. So the student sits there and types their exam on their laptop. When they upload their exam response, it goes to your exam receiver. So this is the upload repository for all of Exam4's exams. Now at that point, we created a service called an exam file watcher. So what this does is it takes the exam file name and it strips apart the components of the file name into the things that we can use to track an exam upload. So the student's test ID is included, the date that the exam was created was also part of that file name, and then you've got the actual exam name itself. There's some other information that we don't necessarily include, but we also throw the whole file name in there. And that information all gets parsed out and dumped into the ExamReporter database. At the same time, our file watcher copies the actual exam file over to a network share for some administrative stuff that we'll get to in a moment. And of course, to make this all really useful, we've got other data, all the other data that we get from our CMS, from our SIS. So we get all the courses, the exams, the test IDs, the student registrations. This is everything that we can use to correlate the student exams to the actual exam files that were uploaded.
Which CMS does NYU use?
NYU recently switched to PeopleSoft. Our database folks actually don't pull it directly from CMS. We have a local data warehouse that we have at the law school that our database guys can work with, and they're the ones who helped us get actual data feeds into our application. So we're not pulling directly from PeopleSoft.
But, excuse me, where do you save the exams? Is it on the Exam4 server or your server?
So the exams get uploaded to the exam receiver, and they stay
I
there.
don't know. I don't use Exam4.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so
Is that local or?
Exam4 provides two options, so you can either host your own exam receiver, or I think they have a hosted option for you as well. So you don't need to have your own, but you can if you like.
And you have your own?
We have our own, and so that gives us the ability to just remotely connect to that server and get at the exams. I'm not sure how it works with the hosted option, but that's how we get to the exams. And also the copying of those exams to our network share gives our administrators easier access to the exam files afterwards.
Let me just say nearly everybody uses the local collection, so everything happens, you know,
Okay.
outside.
All right, thank you.
And how do you tie the course information to the file?
So this is the course information. So we have the exam name that we construct in our drop-down list that goes to Exam4. We have as a unique name. So there's a course ID and the course name and a section if there's a separate section.
Okay.
So that's included as part of the course name, and when that gets uploaded, then we can correlate that to the actual course and exam that we have in the database. So that's what makes the application in terms of the data and everything. And of course, then you have your users who are accessing this. So we have the students who are accessing this to get to the information that they need for their exams and checking their uploads. And then we have also all of our administrative personnel, working from their various offices or locations and things like that, connecting to exam receiver or reporter. And finally, as I mentioned, they also have access to the network shares. So our administrators will get to the network shares to the duplicating folks will print exams. Our academic services folks might look at a log file on an exam if they suspect some sort of, misbehaving from the students. The records and registrations folks can go in and open and print out one-off exam uploads and that sort of a thing.
Okay, so we've seen how ExamReporter works on the back end. So let's take a quick look at some of the main features of ExamReporter on the front end from the user's point of view. So we have the student view. This is what the students see when they log into ExamReporter. So first thing, before they even get to this, the students see a splash page. And this is a page they first log in where we can put up various messages, little instructions on how to use ExamReporter, things like that. Once they get in, they're going to be able to look at some pieces of information. We see that they can verify their name, they're logged in as themselves. We'll see university ID and their anonymous test ID. Beyond that, they can look at their exam schedule, see a list of all the courses that they're registered into, information about those courses, when the exam is taking place, where it's taking place, the type of exam it is, whether it's in class or take home, things like that. They can also do something that's called called requesting a PPA, which is a postponement and accommodation. This is something that we allow students, if they have, for various reasons, scheduling conflicts, things like that, they can request to postpone a particular exam. It turns it into a makeup exam. So they can go into ExamReporter, they can request this postponement, they can check on the status of that request, and if the request is approved, they can see when the new exam schedule is. In addition to that, and arguably most importantly, the students can go in and they can check on the upload status of their exam. Next, we have the user functions. This is the standard users, the administration that can go into ExamReporter. And they are going to see things like a course report, a student report. They can look at an upload summary for the entire exam period, and they can also go in and look at and make notes for particular students or exam files. So the course report, that is going to be, they're going to look at an entire course, all the exams for that course, and they're going to see all the students that are registered in. The students are going to sort of be grouped by whether they've successfully uploaded their exam, if they haven't uploaded, or if there are any invalid uploads. And we call them invalid uploads. That's if somebody uploaded an exam file but they weren't registered into the exam, or maybe they mistyped their anonymous test ID or something like that. So it helps us sort of separate those out and identify those easily. Next, we have the student report. That's where we're looking, instead of at an entire course, we're looking at an individual student. We can see, similar to the student view, we can see that student's information, a little bit more information about that student. We can see their entire exam schedule, and we can also go in and make notes on those students. The upload summary for the semester, that sort of gives us a quick overview, seeing how the entire exam period is going. Look at a lot of courses all at once on one page, and it just shows us a quick view when that exam is scheduled for, how many students are registered in that course, and how many students have uploaded. So, as I mentioned with the postponement accommodation, we have another type of view and role that's a PPA user. They're kind of like a regular user, but they have the added ability to administer the postponements and accommodations, and sort of limit that to only a couple of people in the academic services department. So what they can do is they can administer the postponement requests. So students can make the requests, or academic services can make those requests on behalf of a student. They can go in, they can view what those requests are, they can choose to approve or deny a request, and if they happen to approve a request, they can also set the new schedule for that exam. And we also have some administrative features. These are functions that are sort of really restricted to people like us in ITS. That really only a couple of people are going to have access to these things. This is sort of like user and data management, where we can go in and add new users, change what roles and access they have. We can also go in and, if necessary, do a little bit of manual adjustment on information that we get automatically fed in for courses and exams. If we need to do something with an anonymous test ID for a student, we can go in and manually change it there.
So this component is where it knows how to get from the student record to the anonymous ID.
This is a component that allows us to change that information that is correlating the exam uploads to the students and those exams.
What is registrations?
So registrations is just, so we have the courses and we have a list of students, and the registrations is just matching what students are registered for that particular course. So we know if there's 90 students or 5 students that are expected to take this particular exam. So that's a brief overview of the user interface. I think it probably would be best for us to actually take a look at a real demo of ExamReporter.
So let us flip over to, we've got a test site up, so this is actual test data, protecting the names of the innocent, and I'm going to log in. All right, excellent. So we're logged into our test site, and this is, we're logged in as an administrative user. So if you look on the left-hand navigation here, we've got a number of available options here. I'm going to start with reports, because this is sort of the meat and potatoes of what we do with ExamReporter. So if you get in here, you can see the main things that we're looking at are a course report and a student report. We have something that we call the compliance report, which we're crazy enough to set up this whole compliance thing. We don't know if anyone else would use something like that, but we'll stick to the basics here. So, in the course report, I'm going to randomly select the TORTS exam, and you can see this autocomplete by type, which really helps sort of sifting through. And we'll look at Professor Eslin's TORTS exam. And so this shows you basic information about the exam, sort of the date and where it's located, the start and end times of the exam, and then you see the entire student enrollment in here. Now, once the exam period begins and students are uploading, it gets sort of split up into 3 sections that we'll see. Most of them, and hopefully all of them, are going to be under this valid upload area here. And if we scroll down towards the bottom, you'll see that we also have invalid uploads and students who haven't uploaded yet. So if we look at the student who hasn't uploaded yet, they've got a note next to their name here, and we can see that there's a flag that says, hey, there's a note. And if we click over to that student, then we would see the student report, and if we scroll down to TORTS, we would see that there was a note here that indicated that they uploaded it to a different area. So this is an easy way for the administration to sort of go in, and once they identify where the exam was uploaded, to make a note so that anybody who comes in afterwards can go, aha, that's where that exam file is. The duplicating folks will know that's where the exam is, and they can print it out and update the cover sheet to say that this is the correct test ID for this exam. So I'm going to get back over here. The invalid uploads you see here, if we can find out a couple of things from these invalid uploads. The first is that if we look at the test ID, the student just typed in 1, 2, 3, and all of our test IDs are 4 digits. So it's very easy to kind of go, all right, someone was probably sort of practicing with the product and had uploaded. And indeed, if you look at the created date over here, you can see this is before the day that the exam began. So we know that this is an actual exam that the student was taking. If we scroll up a little bit more, we can see flags over here. So this indicates that there was an approved postponement for the student. So if we looked at this particular student and we saw a late upload or something like that, or we saw that the student hadn't uploaded on the day of the exam, that would lead you to go, okay, this is why they haven't uploaded yet, because they had a postponement. They're taking it later because of one of the approved postponement reasons, or they were sick, or any number of things. Question?
If they took a test exam with the 4 digits on a different day, would it be flagged, or it would just appear in the list?
Excellent question. That's the next thing I'm going to show you. So all the way up at the top, we have a student who did exactly that. So the pink highlighting actually indicates a duplicate upload for the same test ID. So this is just a visual indicator that there's something not quite right or not quite expected. And if you look over here, you then see that the same student had 2 uploads for this exam. So the pink is a duplicate, and then the yellow highlighting here indicates that the file was created early. So it was created before the actual date of the exam. So this indicates that the student probably practiced with this template, uploaded whatever test, mumbo jumbo they tested with, and then actually uploaded their exam file. So when duplicating goes in to print these out, they'll see that there are 2. They'll know why one was early, and they'll easily identify from the 2 files which one they should actually turn into the faculty member.
But they would probably print both of them and then figure out which one.
Right, they might print both of them. What we actually do is on the first day of exams, we'll go into Exam Receiver and we'll clean out all of the files that were uploaded early so that it really minimizes the impact of that. If you have an exam that's sort of towards the end of the exam period and the student uploads it halfway into the exam period as a test, then you might still see something like this. But duplicating, getting a hold of those, that gets minimized by that small step at the beginning of the exam period. Actually, we delete those not from the exam receiver, but from our network share. So all uploaded exams remain on our exam receiver. Nobody really touches those except for the few of us who have administrative access to that. And it helps keep sort of the sanctity of that for us, because we have so many people who would otherwise have access to it. So going back here, one other thing that I will show you before I hand it off to Brian, this is our semester summary. So this shows a general overview of the semester, and this is most conveniently looked at like as you're going along and you want to sort of track and go, all right, it's towards the end of the day, we want to see if anything strange is happening. Did we get all 20 out of 20 uploads for somebody's common law exam or whatever it is? And you can see that usually we sort this by date and time. ascending, and you'll see, everybody is uploaded here, so you're not seeing any values that look a little bit out of range, but if you were looking at this in real time, you'd see a bunch of zeros towards the bottom for uploads, along with a number of enrollments.
I take it all those columns are sortable, so you can look at it.
Yeah, all of these columns up here are sortable, so we could sort by course name if we wanted to, or we have course ID, number of students registered, number of uploads, those sorts of things. So whatever you like, and it's very configurable. So with that, let me pass it off to Brian.
Okay.
We're on the student report.
Yes. So, all right, so let's take a look at the student report here. So I'll go back to the report screen. And so down here we can search for an individual student. We can search based on their net ID, their anonymous test ID for that particular semester, or we can also search on their name. So I'll just type in this random name of Adam. And if there's more than one student with a particular name, whether it's the first name or last name, it's going to, instead of going directly to that student, we're going to get this little search results page, which allows us to sort of sift through and choose the student that we want, and we will randomly click on Adam Harris. Okay, so this is this particular student. We see at the top some information about that student, their name, their university ID, their role, which is kind of indicating like what year they are. In this case, this is a 2L. We're going to see what semester we happen to be looking at, because we can choose which semester. We can go back and look at previous semester's data as well. We see here the final test ID. This is the anonymous grading ID that we use if the student happens to be registered into a course with a midterm exam. Then they're going to see two test IDs there. They'll see final test ID and they'll see midterm test ID. Below that, we're going to see logins. This is for the students, sort of a record of each student that has logged into ExamReporter. And we can see this student's logged in 15 times. It's not limited by a particular semester, so this is all, sort of across all of time for this student. But we can click on the number and we can just get a quick log of each of those logins, so we can see, when exactly the student logged in. The student might be claiming that they logged into ExamReporter and checked something for compliance or something like that, and we could know if they're taking us for a ride. So, and speaking of compliance, we have here the view for the compliance that we mentioned earlier. Now, this student is listed as non-compliant if they had taken and uploaded properly their practice exam by the deadline. It would be showing a nice green color, compliant. And it's just a little blurb about our policy regarding compliance. We keep going down, and now we start to see the actual courses that the student is registered into. So on any given course, we're going to see the title of the course, the course ID, which happens to be clickable if we want to look at the entire course report for that, the instructor, the semester. If there are any notes that were made for that particular student's course, we can see those notes here. And we see the schedule for the exam. Now, you're seeing two exam schedules here. This student had requested a postponement for this exam, and that postponement was granted. So we're seeing in gray the original schedule date for the exam, and highlighted in yellow is the postponed time and location for that exam. Below that, we are going to see the exam files that have been uploaded, if there were any. In this case, they uploaded their exam file just fine. And if we want to, we can make a quick note if there was something amiss about this particular exam file. We can put that note in here, and any of the administration can see it. By the way, all of the notes that we make in ExamReporter are limited to the administration. The students don't get to see that information. Let me scroll down a little bit further, and we're going to see another course. This course happens to be a take-home exam. We use a different system for take-home. So instead of showing upload information for that, we're just saying check the take-home exam system. Same thing for evidence. This is an exam that they did not request a postponement, so this is what most students would see. And Con Law, again, take-home. The student was very lucky to only have one in-class exam.
Or they registered very carefully.
Yeah. And at the bottom here, we're going to have the practice exam. And so this is the exam that we ask all the students to take, and this is what correlates to the exam compliance. So the student can log in after they take their practice exam, and they can check to see if it was successfully uploaded, as well as check on their compliance status above.
Why is that student non-compliant even though it appears to
That is a little bit of a glitch. We had to look at some historical data and do a little bit of obfuscation on everything to sort of protect the guilty. So that ended up causing the students to all be listed as non-compliant. Normally the student would be compliant because they did upload by the deadline. So
Good catch.
yeah. So this is the student view that the administration see, that everybody, all the employees can go in and see. But the students, they get a slightly different view, and we can actually go in from here and click on this link, and this will show us what exactly the students are going to see. So it looks very similar, but the students are seeing considerably less information. We don't really need to show them everything, so we only show them what's really relevant to them, their name, university ID, their anonymous grading IDs, which are vitally important. We have a little section up here for a message. If the academic services wants to have a message for the students, they can put that here. In this case, they wanted us to provide a link for exam proctor evaluations for the entire exam period, so that's what that is. Below that, again, we show the exam. Yes?
Do you have one exam ID for every exam they take?
The anonymous ID?
Yeah, that's what.
That's for the entire semester for that student. So they get issued every exam period, I should say. They get issued one anonymous ID, and they'll use that for all of their exams during that exam period. If they have midterms, it'll be a separate ID for the midterms. But for all 5 final exams, they use the same test ID.
Although they could actually have a 7-week final exam for like a half semester length course. So they'd use their final exam test ID in October. They could also use a midterm test ID at the same time for a full period course that had a midterm.
Sometimes it can get a little confusing with all that.
It was fun to program that in.
So, okay, so we scroll down a little bit further past the compliance, and again, we have a little bit of a message that's saying, warning the student about our policy regarding compliance. And again, we see the almost exactly what we saw before. This is the student schedule. See almost all the same information. The only thing that's omitted here is, as I mentioned before, they don't see any of the notes. So we can take notes, we can put almost anything we want into those notes. Those things are kept restricted to just the administration.
The dates and times and rooms, is that just standalone data, or is that being pulled or shared with any other service?
That's being pulled in from the law school's course management system.
Okay.
So we pull in a lot of the student data and the registration information from the university's SIS. That gets pulled into our course management system, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then academic services or the faculty assistants go in and set the information for the individual courses and exams.
Okay.
So in academic services, I think they do all the room scheduling for that stuff.
Faculty members are theoretically, they have the ability to go in and set their own course information, but it's most often the assistants who do that.
This is true.
And I think that's sort of the experience with everyone here we found.
Okay. I asked that because right now our calendars are paper. So we're looking at, does that need to tie in the future
Gotcha.
if we go digital? So,
Okay.
thank you.
So that's the student report. We saw the course report and the summary. Let's take a look at a different section here. We're going to skip down to the postponement and accommodation portion, and we'll just briefly go over this. At the top, you can just search for a student based on their net ID or their anonymous test ID, and we can see all of the requests that have been made for that student, or we can even open up a new request for that student. Down here at the bottom, we're going to see all of the requests that have been made for this particular semester for all students. And those requests are broken up into different tab sections. Pending, those are the requests that have come in, either from the student or academic services, but they haven't been processed yet. Nothing's been done with them. Approved, those are, of course, the ones that have all been accepted by academic services. They'll have new exam times and locations, if necessary, scheduled for those. Denied, of course, are the ones that academic services didn't agree with. And canceled, we, instead of deleting a request, if a mistake was made or a student decided they wanted to withdraw a request, we don't actually delete any data, we just mark it as canceled. If they made a mistake and they submitted something, we would just cancel it, and then they would go back in and make a new request with the correct information. So let's take a look at what the creation process is for a postponement. I'm just going to type in a random student ID here, an anonymous ID here.
We're being very generous with the use of the word random right now.
Okay, so as with the student report, you're going to see some information about the student here. And below, we're going to see what we have the ability to do with a postponement. If the student had any postponement requests, they would be listed here, whether they were pending, approved, denied, or canceled. They would all show up here. We can click over and look at that student's exam schedule in a more compact form. And we actually have a calendar view. It defaults over to the current date, but it's going to show in a little bit friendlier of a format for some people the schedule for that student. We click back over here to the requests, and we have a drop-down list that are all for all of the exams that the student is registered in for the semester. So we'll pick real estate transactions, and we can choose the postponement type, and that's the reason that the student is requesting the postponement. And these are reasons that Academic Services has come up with, and they say, okay, these are the only valid reasons that we'll accept. And most of these have to do with scheduling conflicts. Too many exams in such a period of time, or 3 consecutive that are totaling more than 12 credits. Illness, if the student gets sick and they can't make it to their exam, we might have a reason for that. Other is sort of, just in there we can have a sort of a free-form field where we can type in something that doesn't necessarily fit into one of these categories. That's something that's limited just to Academic Services. The students aren't allowed to use that, otherwise they'd probably abuse it. And we have a couple of other things. In absentia, if the student is going to take it at a different law school or something like that. The approved CDS accommodation, that's the accommodation part of the PPA. That's if a student has some sort of a disability that they need maybe more time for their exam than the regular scheduled amount of time. Maybe they need to use special software on their computer like screen reading software. We have a student who is visually impaired, so he uses JAWS. We might have students that have difficulty typing, so maybe they'll use Dragon Naturally Speaking or something like that. So schedule those students for a different length of time, maybe a different day, and put them into a different room so those things aren't disturbing the rest of the students. So for this, we'll say 2 on the same day. Now we can create the request and just leave it as pending and come back later and decide whether we're going to approve or deny it. But for simplicity here, we'll just say we're going to approve it automatically. And here's where we can select that we want to put in a new date and time. So we're going to say, let's schedule it for Monday. We're going to do that at 9 a.m. And we're going to go and choose the end time. Notice we can't choose a date in the past, so we can't have the exam end before it begins. We'll choose the same day, and we'll say they're going to end at 12 noon. And then because this happens to be an in-class exam, and we can just go and take a quick check. Yep, okay, real estate transaction, that's in class. So we need to choose a new location for it. So we have a list of all the different exam rooms that we use at the law school here, and so we'll just put them into room 110. Click create. And that's it. Now we have a request number we have a postponement request for this particular student. And if we want to, we can go quickly click in and check on it and see, okay, that was the reason, here's when it was requested, and here's all the new scheduling info. And of course, as we saw before, we go in and look at that student report, and we're going to see highlighted in yellow now the new exam date and time for the start, the end, and the new exam location with the original information grayed out. So now let's take a quick look. Yes?
Could you show the accommodation?
So the accommodation is it's very similar to.
Let's turn that into an accommodation.
No, we already created, so we would have to cancel it and do it. So you know what? Let's do that. Let's just create another one really quickly. We'll use a random student again. And actually, as you'll see here, because we already have a pending or approved request, now we can't accidentally make a duplicate request. So that particular exam is no longer showing up in the list. We'll choose con law, and if we say approved accommodation, is really not much different for what's going on there. The Academic Services maintains their own hard copies of paperwork for all that stuff. So there's actually a university-wide department it's called the Moses Center that is dedicated just to handling requests from students for accommodations. So each semester, the students go to the center. They explain what the reason is that they have for making an accommodation request. That organization determines whether that's an acceptable reason or not, and then passes that information on to academic services. So in this case, for the accommodations, the students don't actually make those requests in ExamReporter. Usually, academic services will do that for them. But just another quick thing, if academic services happens to choose other, then we can go in and type whatever reason that is for that postponement. Okay, so we're gonna skip over all through them because I think we're, yes?
Is there a time limit placed on how close to the exam that you put in the request? For instance, do you have to be at least, I don't know, an hour before the exam?
The academic services, they have their own rules as to how far in advance students have to make those requests. We don't enforce that necessarily in ExamReporter. The only thing we enforce is that a student, once the exam start time has been reached, the student can't go in and make a postponement request. But academic services can. So if there was an illness, for example, the student didn't know they weren't going to show up for the exam, they come in, they email or contact academic services, say, here's my doctor's note, I was in the emergency room. Academic services will go in and just make that request for them.
Yeah, the academic services used to, when they did this all by paper, they had a deadline several weeks before the exam period actually began, that all requests would have to be submitted so that they could go through the paperwork and approve or deny and actually schedule out the requests. Now we can essentially do it at any time, and in ExamReporter we made sure that the feature, you could actually go back and after the fact enter a request for an exam that already occurred. So in the midst of all the harem scarum of exams, if someone did get sick or something, a death in the family, these things happen, that you don't put these in immediately as they come up, but at least when you go to reschedule the exam, you have an ability to put that in and let the student know when their new date and time is.
Yeah, this is actually a really big feature that was really helpful for some of the folks in academic services. They used to have a mountain of paperwork for all this stuff. The students would fill out by hand their exam schedule on a little calendar, so we have a calendar view. And they had some crazy spreadsheet where they tracked all this stuff. So this feature actually makes it a lot easier for both the students and academic services. So we're gonna skip over all through them because I don't think anybody else does that craziness. So there's really no reason to get into that right here.
We're getting to the end of our time here. So
Yeah, we're running out of time.
Glance briefly at administrative features.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the administrative features, this is for people like ITS to be able to go in and make a few changes if necessary manually to the information that we have automatically fed into the system. So we can go and tweak information on a course or registration. We manually create the semesters and select the start and the end times for those based on the exam schedules. So we go in and do that. We have to manually create the practice exam because those aren't automatically generated in the student information system. So once a semester we come in here and we do a couple little things.
So that's the end of our demo here.
That is.
And we've got one or two more things to mention here before we open up for questions. So our technology stack that we built this all on, this was all built on open source stuff. So it's a LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, if you're familiar with those. We initially built this in straight up PHP. We rebuilt it a year later using the Zen framework to make it a little more readable and functional. We use Git for version control. We develop on local VMs. We have a development, test, production cycle so that we can test things with, fake really bad data for basic testing, a simulation of our production data for testing before we push everything to production and break things for our users. It's really lightweight. When we first rolled this out, this was we were running it on an old Dell Optiplex 620. And that had both the application and the database running on it, and we never saw any performance issues. So it's very easy, it's very lightweight, low cost to implement. And our development team was 3 guys from help desk. We are 2 of them, and the third of us is back on campus holding down the fort. So we really can at least answer any questions you have about the product right now. And then finally, hey, if you want to get your own, talk to us. We actually are planning on publishing this open source. We have some cleanup on the code to do in terms of commenting and removing some of our really sort of localized stuff out of there, like we might not include the compliance or the alternate features if we push it open source. But really, come talk to us after the session. Question?
So if you do push it open source, is it going to be easily manipulable? And I ask that because Paul probably have to be one of
So easy, easy is a relative term. So
like we don't let our students schedule when they're taking their exams. I mean, it's that kind of stuff that we wouldn't need in the product. And then the second question was, how easy politically was it to get the data that you need from the registrar's office or student services or whatever?
the data wasn't bad. We were able to go to our law school database folks. They have access to all of the university's data, which includes the SIS information. We have our own application to the law school that we use for course management that indicates some of the features about a course, the type of exam that it's using, the date and time of the exam. So that is all data that is available to us that we're able to feed into the application. So if you didn't have that data available to you, there would probably be a lot of sort of, making sure that you could get that in a digital format. And then at this point, if we were to hand you code right now, you would have to probably go into the database and push stuff directly into the database.
Well, I was thinking more of the student data, but now that I'm sitting here thinking through it and have a cup of coffee later, right now I can get anything I need, even in an Excel format. I mean, the registrar's office, I can make any kind of weird requests and they just shoot me an Excel spreadsheet, which is lovely. But I guess I could just use that really and upload this stuff.
That could be dumped into my system.
Yeah.
That's actually something we, I'm really hoping that before we publish this officially open source, that we can add the functionality in so that you can just upload, not necessarily an Excel spreadsheet, but like a CSV file from Excel of all that data, so you don't have to worry about having an automated data feed in from database people. We lucked out and we have a really good relationship with everybody else in our IT department, and they, because we were developing it at the same time, they helped guide us a little bit in how we were doing the security because of their own concerns based on the student data. But like I said, we want to add in the functionality so you can just do a one-click upload for a semester of that student data.
You most likely want like a partner in the IT department who understands the basic technology here, being able to go in and at least edit some of the forms and visually what you're seeing and change that code on your production environment.
And actually, to touch on your first question, as to how editable and how customizable this is going to be, because we're going to be publishing it open source, you're going to have all of the code and you can do whatever you want to it. So if you want to add in functionality, you want to remove functionality, you want to change how something works, if you have somebody who is familiar with PHP and things like that, they can go in and make all of those changes that you want.
That's awesome.
It's awesome. It's also really great as far as CSS and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah, it's really slick.
Yeah, we want to, thank you for saying that, we actually want to change the visuals of it a little bit. It's based on our current law website theme, but we're going to be changing that hopefully in the near future. So we want to make ExamReporter a little bit more generic, especially once we publish it open source, so it's a little bit easier and more customizable for other folks, and it doesn't look like NYU law.
It's a far cry from 12 point Times New Roman on white background with left line. That's about as far as we've got.
We built it. It was, the idea was to try and make it
process.
Well, it's fairly Web 2.0-ish, but easy to read stuff.
So if you're gonna change the look for the open source it, maybe we should chat about that because I guess, and that actually raises another question, which is, I mean, this is a lever off our data. But I mean, other data, it's open source. You can use it for other data, other kinds of data, and do other things with it, right? Can you think of anything, or is it really just? I mean, it happens to be tied to Exam4 exam file data.
Yeah, we're going to have all the information that's in, all the data that's in there now. If you want to take it and add in different functionality, that's and leverage that data in other ways. It's for us. It's something that's very specific to the exam period. But it might be people might find other uses for it that we haven't really thought of yet. Yeah.
What kind of support would you
well, you probably wouldn't, that's open source.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean, it's kind of a, caveat emptor minus the buyer part, but we are happy to provide some level of guidance and support for anybody who's willing to adopt it for their own uses.
You know what else, and, we might also, I shouldn't say that I shouldn't jump into that, but it occurs to me, things like this, the whole point of it is that, it finds its path, right? It finds its level. And if we find that there's a lot of adoption and we get to know it, we might be a resource too. And another thing is that we might support or sponsor even a resource like Brian's the expert, and we could work out a deal with NYU, and other schools could maybe go to him and they would be okay with that or something like that. There's a lot of ways things can go, and that's kind of the beauty of letting things happen organically like this. I love it.
Another way would be, some kind of forum support, source codes, or something like that, so that you can sort of parcel out the, how big is your school basically? Pretty big. Big enough so there'll be people to talk to.
It's really a juggernaut, it's formidable.
We probably publish this to GitHub, which actually has forums built in so that there can be discussion on the code and at least some basic support documentation. One of the things we've considered doing is actually creating a package bundle as like an Amazon Web Services image. So you could go in and grab hey, clone this thing off of that, and you have everything up and running and at least basically configured to work. So you wouldn't have to configure Apache and MySQL and everything. You'd have that stuff basically set up if we could get that running. You'd have to go in and set all of your school particulars and start adjusting the code based on that. But at least you would be building a whole box from the ground up.
Have you ever seen a hybrid model where a company like ours would sponsor an open source utility package? I mean, we'd be totally responsible for it.
Not necessarily the scenario, but there are a lot of companies that commercial companies that do support open source products. Oracle, for better or worse, is one of them. There's a lot of products out there that are open source that they are actually sponsoring and helping provide some of the funding for and some of the support for. So yeah, I mean, there's precedence for that kind of thing.
We've seen that run as a service on an Amazon cloud server or something that we chip into, but we're not like fully responsible for. So kind of like I said, it's kind of a hybrid support relationship. It's actually pretty interesting.
Might be security issues though.
Well, but people are talking about open sourcing voting machine software. So and Bitcoin's open source. So there's definitely ways to be secure and open source. That's not necessarily exclusive.
Are you keeping your exam receiver and your reporter databases on different servers? Or
yes, because the database server is one system because we have a sort of a large database production server. So that's where we're housing the database for ExamReporter, although in theory you could put that on any machine you want, and originally that was running on the same machine that was running the actual ExamReporter application. The ExamReporter application is running on a VM in-house, and Exam Receiver is currently running on just an old desktop computer right now, but we're going to be hopefully for the fall semester migrate that over to a VM as well. So they are different boxes currently.
I have a piece of duct tape for the on-off switch for your desktop. It's actually gaffer tape.
I think the lore was when we first met with Exam, Greg said, "Yeah, we've got some guy who's running on an old 280 that's all duct taped up."
I think actually the first semester we used it, the machine was sitting in your office. I don't know if it was it was definitely through midterms. I don't know if it was through finals. It was sitting on the floor next to your desk in your office. So, yes.
So without getting into the secret sauce that is Exam4, I think that one of the things that would really be cool, and I don't know if it's even possible, would be to get more data about the exam other than what's in the file name itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's something, if you guys were actually getting into something like this, to be able to see how long the exam actually took and
there's carts and horses, and this is a terrific course, and there's all kinds of different parts to it. So one of the issues that we that we always have in mind is the more we do, the more we're responsible for. we have to be careful, which one of the balls keeping our eye on. On top of that, if we make something, what are the chances that it's exactly what you need? And so, so that's sort of the assessment that always has to happen. But when we get enough people saying this is something you really need, we've always been really responsive to that. Something like this opens the door to a lot of possibilities.
And so if we had a lot of people start using ExamReporter, then that might provide more impetus to, for them to build something like an API to Exam Opener that we could then leverage to extract the information that's in the exam file and use that in the application.
How long have you used Exam? How long have you used Exam?
We've just finished our third year with Exam4, and we rolled out the rudimentary functionality of ExamReporter in the first fall. We added the student portal in the spring. We added the postponement accommodation features the following fall, and since then it's been minor tweaks and fixes and things.
We just added the alt room this past fall. We added the alt room functionality, which we didn't really cover in the demo.
I apologize for being late and you have gone over this, but can you email classes of students from the database? Like if I needed to send out some form of information about a particular exam to the students using it, yeah. Is there a way to? There's
no direct way. That's a feature that we've talked about incorporating into ExamReporter. We don't have anything like that right now, but the way the views are laid out, like if you go into an individual course, you actually can kind of highlight the table and just dump it into Excel really quickly.
Right.
And for us, one of the pieces of information that's listed there is the net ID, which is part of the student's NYU email address. So we just concatenate at NYU.edu, and then we can just fire off an email that way. But that is a feature that we've considered.
That's easy enough to do in Excel. I was just curious.
It's also been less compelling for us. We also have a law school-based email system that we have a pool of ways to slice and dice our student population, so we can email a particular class or the whole student body already. So it was less impetus for us to build that into ExamReporter already, but it's something we've talked about. It could be built out by any one of you.
When we publish it open source, anybody else can add in that feature.
Y'all work on that.
And I know at our school, we just use Blackboard instead, because they're already built into it, and it has the
Right.
But if I'm not a member of that Blackboard class, then I can't do that. So.
Okay, so thank you, folks. If anybody is interested in learning more about ExamReporter, discussing possibility of getting it, please just talk to us, let us know, email us, whatever you want.
Because there's no way for me to see it.
We do. Exam4 has a spell check feature built in, so that is available for Exam4 you can say that.
Oh, really? Oh, it's 6 o'clock up. I got my phone confirmed, so.
That's all included as part of their time. So, the proctors actually get in and they say, you get now, stop now. So that's the administrative stuff. We get them for an example, there's a security check and they go past, they get to where they can actually type their response. Once they get past that, that's when we try and get everybody to that point where the proctors we usually have a pretty strategy before the exam, if you're still starting up or something like that.
You don't know who's in the course.
The other thing is, the difference is
It's a little bit more of like Mom's project, so you
4 or 5 or
it doesn't really anything.
I would for director and registrar. I'm going to need to be so you can continue to show the interface real quick.
Yeah, we can do
Like right now, the very first slide you did, Windows Explorer, right? That's how we do it. We have all monitors.
Okay.
Literally just bring up the folder.
Okay.
And we shrink it down to columns, and they can just see enough of the exam number. Right. So they just walk up and see it in the folder. That's right. So, yeah, I think that they would really enjoy this approach. Yeah, even if it's 15 minutes on Google Hangout.
Yeah, I was going to say we could do some sort of WebEx type of thing. And this was our test environment. So we could do something like that for you guys as well. If you want to take notes on it, we'll make it for users and we'll have a data in there.
Yeah, because I think that simplified thing with this thing is actually like, and we're gonna be really clear with this, like I said, 10, 15 minutes. Whether they say, aha, that makes sense, or wait, why? So,
Yeah, it's really easy, right now to sort of go in and check on the results.
We had one issue over there.
Yeah, like I was calling for the old design and stuff. Take all
I don't know how that will shape.
I really appreciate that. It's a cool approach.
Hi there.
I changed bags and didn't bring cars.
I did not bring a card either. Okay.
I'll put it in my order.
Excellent. So our email address is Ryan.
But in any case,
They can come from the station.
A little different than everywhere. That's NYU that way.
I changed bags all right, excellent.
So, yeah, send me an email, with whatever you're interested in. There was somebody else on the phone a second ago who was asking about, the possibility of doing some sort of demo, for their dean or their administration. So if you want to do something like that, or we could just, give it to you, sort of access to, or test the dev environment, you can go and play raw data.
So what I'm trying to do is come up down.
Give your,
Check to see if there's a
Okay, still,
So, what really concerns me where do they say this exam is?
Yeah, we get lots of NYU school laws or scroll down. Right, and they'll just do the same thing, yeah, we get a lot of that kind of stuff. And that was one of our big concerns, is moving to ExamReporter, like, they can track all these things down, and ExamReporter really helps show you should get. So, yeah, all right, great.
Well,